Okay, so maybe your trade deadline has passed already. Maybe you still need some little pick-me-up on the waiver wires. As always, I'm bringing you my top waiver wire additions that you should be adding going into week 13 of the fantasy football season. We are only 2 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs. And guys, good luck if you are still in the race. So keep in mind, we do have some big things coming up this week. 6 teams are on a bye week. The Ravens, the Bills, the Bears, the Raiders, the Vikings, and my beloved New York Giants. Over 21 players that are going to be out of commission for your potentially must-win week going into week 13. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, Justin Fields, DJ Moore, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson. The list goes on, guys. We all know the bye week, so make sure you plan accordingly as you go into this week. And let's get straight into my waiver wire video. All right, before we get into my list, one of the biggest things I wanted to bring and present to you guys is how vital and crucial it is for you to get your running back handcuff right now. I know you're probably saying, well, my running back hasn't missed time. My running back has been injured. My running back's not injury prone. Whatever the case may be, I think you need to prioritize them no matter what, because maybe that 1 week, maybe you had CMC and the one game that he does miss is in week 15 where you need to win in the playoffs. Or maybe you have someone like a Travis Etienne who hasn't missed a game this year and he misses week 15 of the fantasy playoffs. You would regret not picking up your running back handcuff right now before it is too late, before everyone, maybe the last person in the playoffs has an extra 10 to 15 fab, hasn't used his fab, and you use all your fab, and you know he's going to pick up that player. You're not going to want that. So make sure you use whatever fab you have now, whatever you need to do to acquire your running back handcuff, just to solidify this team, to solidify this backfield, to solidify that win, if anything. And here are a list of running backs, not even every single handcuff running backs that is out there, because that list will be tremendous, right? But Elijah Mitchell of CMC goes down. Travis Etienne with Dearness Johnson, who looks like he is a more competent back over Tank Bigsby. A Zach Moss, which we have seen the success without Jonathan Taylor. Tajay Spears, who has been a little bit in the mix ever since day one. Kenneth Gainwell of DeAndre Swift does miss some time. This is a good example. DeAndre Swift hasn't missed a game this year, but if he does miss a game, we know that Kenneth Gainwell is going to step up and step into all those opportunities that DeAndre Swift is going to be leaving behind if he misses 1 or 2 games. Rico Dowell, same thing with Tony Pollard. He's already getting a good opportunity. And Roscoe Johnson. We're going to see what that's going to look like with him on Monday night without Deontay Foreman, but still somebody I'm willing to pick up. And I would also include Deontay Foreman in this list if Khalil Herbert does miss some time as well. So keep that in mind, guys. Guys, please make sure you secure your handcuff right now before it is too late. All right, going into my first waiver wire pickup. And actually, before we actually get into that, this is going to be a shorter list. We all know we've been here for 12 weeks already. We've been telling you all the players you should be picking up and stashing for high upside opportunities. These are the top 4 players I believe could potentially be league winners or help your team improve in any type of way because of their upside, because of their opportunities, because of whatever that looks like in my perspective. And I'm going to be bringing you that to here today. Not only that, I'm bringing you must stream quarterbacks for week 13 and defenses for week 13. So my first must add a waiver wire list player coming into this week, and that is Pat the Dragon, Pat Freiermuth, coming out of injury and performing the way that we all hoped and expected, right? 9 out of 11 targets, over 120 yards this past week, and that is something that we all love to see. I mean, he's only rostered in 41% of ESPN leagues and 49% of sleeper leagues, meaning that he is available in over 50% of ESPN and sleeper leagues. And we have seen, with Matt Canada now gone, we've seen Kenny Pickett pepper his tight end position, which he has done before, no question about it. But this is the first time we've seen this offense as well surpass over 400 yards in 58 games with Matt Canada as offensive coordinator. They have not surpassed over 400 yards on offense. The first game without Matt Canada, they surpassed over 400 yards of offense. I don't think that's a coincidence. You can see how this team, how Kenny Pickett is spreading the ball around now. As Kenny Pickett getting better. I say he looked better. I'm not saying that he is going to be a superstar now, but Pat Frymuth has always been a top tight end in our books. He is somebody that I believe if you are struggling with bye weeks, which we've seen, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews on a bye, Dalton Kincaid on a bye, Cole Kmet on a bye, Michael Mayer, TJ Hawkinson is on a bye. All those guys, if you do need a tight end, once again, available in over 50% of ESPN and sleeper leagues, my first waiver wire priority, because I do believe he is still going to continue to be a vital part of this offense, and Kenny Pickett is going to improve now with Matt Canada, calling the play calls, right? So Pat Frymuth, my first waiver wire addition. My second must-add waiver wire pick coming into week 13, somebody that I think is very underrated and still available in a decent amount of leagues, and that is Jayden Reed here. And as I just said, still available in a decent amount of leagues. He is rostered in 31% of ESPN leagues and rostered in 55% of sleeper leagues, meaning that he is still widely available in a lot of your leagues out there that you can potentially pick up, plug, and play on your week 13 lineup here. And let me tell you why. Since week 7, Jayden Reed is the wide receiver 7, averaging 14 fantasy points in those from week 7 to 12. After the bye week, we have been seeing this Green Bay Packers offense, including Jayden Reed creatively in jet sweeps, backfield motions, whatever the case may be, getting him the ball early and often for Jayden Reed, and that's exactly what you want to see. The last 3 out of the 6, he scored a touchdown in 3 out of the 6 games we have seen so far here. And this past week on Thanksgiving, caught 4 out of 8 targets, 35 yards and a touchdown, over 15 fantasy points. He's a top 7 wide receiver since week 7. That is absolutely wild. He is going to be in our Dynasty channel in the second half of the season when you look at these numbers and stats, saying that he's a league winner. And not only that, the upcoming schedule is decent. Okay, yes, he has Kansas City Chiefs in week 13, but then he has my beloved Giants, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina Panthers, then the Minnesota Vikings. He has one of the appealing fantasy schedules leading up to the fantasy playoffs. And that's exactly what I want to see. Good opportunity for a wide receiver, especially when you think of the fantasy points given to the wide receivers positions as well against defenses. And Jayden Reed is somebody, once again, getting worked into this offense that we need to take advantage of. Once again, he is available and he is rostered in 31% of ESPN leagues and rostered in 55% of sleeper leagues, meaning that you should be able to pick him up and acquire him depending on if you are in a sharp league or not. Jayden Reed is my second must-add waiver wire addition. My third must-add waiver wire addition going into week 13 is going to the Washington Commanders, and that is Curtis Samuel. Yes, Curtis Samuel, we saw this past week, kind of got back to this form that we all expected that we saw in the first 6 weeks of the season. Caught 9 out of 12 targets, 100 yards, 19 fantasy points against Dallas on that Thursday night Thanksgiving game. And what we also see is that he's still widely available in a lot of leagues, rostered in 35% of ESPN leagues and also rostered in 39% of sleeper leagues. And look, kind of things that we were talking about earlier, same thing with Jayden Reed. When you look at the first half of the season for Curtis Samuel, we've seen the consistency when you see these opportunities, right? He was wide receiver 24, averaging over 12 fantasy points per game. He wasn't somebody that was going to, get 25 fantasy points or do something crazy. He was a consistent player week in and week out, and this is one of the reasons why, because we were getting upset with him because he was taking opportunities away from Jahan Dotson. But we saw in the first 6 weeks of the season 18 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points, 14 fantasy points, 11 fantasy points. Those are the type of opportunities that we saw. And then not only that, the targets as well. 8 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, again 5 targets. Those are all the opportunities that we saw. And Sam Howell currently is dueling right now, has a tough matchup, which means that these teams, well, the Washington Commanders specifically, is going to be playing from behind often, and that's what you want and hope and expect. That we've seen the chemistry with Curtis Samuel and Sam Howell, that he is one of his favorite targets when he's on the field and healthy. Curtis Samuel is coming back from injury that he's suffered from week 6 onwards. He's been kind of in and out, and then he came in and out, missed a couple games, came back, still was dealing with the injury. Looked like he was 100% finally in week 12. Once again, caught 9 out of 12 targets, over 19 fantasy points. So Curtis Samuel, if he's available in your league, once again, it's available, rostered in 35% of ESPN leagues and rostered in 39% of sleeper leagues. So make sure you go pick up Curtis Samuel. All right, and last but not least, before we get into our quarterback and defensive streamers, someone that's not as exciting, but if you are in a deeper league, maybe a 14, 16-man league, or maybe, hey, you have deep rosters spots here. Maybe you have 3-4 wide receiver sets. Jalen Hyatt is somebody that I'm willing to pick up and, just stash and see what's going to happen for the next couple of weeks here. We saw finally his breakout game, caught 5 out of 6 targets for over 100 yards and over 15 fantasy points. He did play the New England Patriots, but what's exciting is his upcoming schedule. Now, yes, he's on a team that is not that as exciting. He has Tommy DeVito, Danny DeVito's son, throwing him the ball. And look, he had 2 decent games because of the bad defenses and offenses on the opposite side of the ball. But he is going to be playing against some better offenses and arguably some worse defenses when you look at the fantasy playoffs here. Okay, when you look at the fantasy playoffs, week 14, obviously just leading up to the playoffs, playing the Green Bay Packers, then the New Orleans Saints, then he goes to Philly, who currently give up the most points to the wide receiver position, then the Rams, then Philly again. Look, I'm not saying he's going to be a league winner. I think there could be an opportunity for it, no doubt about it. But hey, if you're looking for somebody that's going to get 5 targets and still get these massive chunk yards, like a Raheed Shaheed, like a Jameson Williams, maybe those guys, yes, are maybe more talented than Jalen Hyatt, but there's no one else hindering Jalen Hyatt and taking those opportunities away. And I think that's what's exciting when you think of him. Okay, so keep that in mind. Once again, not the most exciting player, but somebody that I'm willing to pick up and stash and pick up on my for my team, just in case I'm dealing with injuries, or once again, if I'm in a deeper 14, 16-man league, when I'm saying, hey, maybe I can start him as my wide receiver 5, depending on how your league is set up. But if you're in a smaller league, I am not willing to start him with confidence unless we see a little bit more consistency in the next coming weeks. And let's get straight into my streamers. Okay, let's go into my top 3 streamer quarterbacks for week 13 of the fantasy season. Keep in mind, this is based off schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed from the opposing defense to the quarterback position. Okay, keep that in mind. My first quarterback on this list is Gardner Minshew versus the Tennessee Titans. They're at the Tennessee Titans, actually, and the Titans currently give up the 10th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. One of the things that I really love when I think about this matchup is how bad the Tennessee Titans are when it gives up points to the wide receiver position, because they're currently bottom 5 when they give up points to the wide receiver position, which really correlates with the points giving up to the quarterback position, because once again, they give up 10 most and they give up the 5th most at the wide receiver position. So when you think of Gardner Minshew, you think of Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, even Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, you think of him giving those double passes, deep opportunities down the field. That's exactly what you want to see when you think of an opportunity as a streamer quarterback. And if you are struggling at the quarterback position because of bye weeks, because of Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson, a Justin Fields, a Joshua Dobbs who was on a bye week as well, all in week 13, Gardner Minshew could be a good plug and play coming into this week. My next streamer quarterback of this week is Baker Mayfield versus the Carolina Panthers, playing at home the first time he's going to be meeting this divisional rival here. But when you think about this matchup and you're seeing here, they actually give up the 4th least amount of points to the quarterback position. But when you really think of it and you look at this offense can't move the ball. And that is my biggest concern here when I think of, not concerned, but plus when I think of Baker Mayfield coming into this game. Bryce Young just can't stay on the field, right? And maybe it's his fault, maybe it's a play calling, whatever the case may be. The Bucs are decent when it comes down to, creating pressure, and Bryce Young is not the best at pressure at the moment. He's trying his best, not knocking him whatsoever. But I see a lot of opportunities for Baker Mayfield to get onto the field when I think of this game here. And Baker Mayfield has been pretty consistent you know, throughout the season, he hasn't been somebody that, you know, ruin your fantasy week or ruin your fantasy year, whatever the case may be. He has been pretty good again. When you think of him, he's been averaging over 16 fantasy points per game. And that's what you want. Once again, a safe floor for someone that is going to be a streamer for you this week. And then Russell Wilson at the Texans here. Mr. Unlimited coming back, doing some good things against Cleveland. 17 fantasy points against Cleveland. Not the craziest game, but a good, safe floor. And he's going against the Houston Texans, who currently give up the 3rd most points to the quarterback position. And that's exactly what you want to see when you look at streaming opportunities. These guys are clicking. These guys are on a winning streak. And CJ Stroud can score on your defense. Whether this is a good defense or bad defense for the Denver Broncos, this should also be a shootout, a game that can be going back and forth when you think about it. So I expect multiple touchdowns for Russell Wilson. This is why he's one of my top streamers coming into this week. So once again, Gardner Mitchell versus the Titans, Baker Mayfield versus the Panthers, and Russell Wilson versus the Houston Texans. Now let's get straight into my defensive streamers. All right, the same as the quarterback position, 3 streaming defenses that you can pick up, plug and play going into week 13 of the fantasy football season. As you can see here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Carolina Panthers. Something really similar to kind of mimicking what I'm saying. You should be starting Baker Mayfield. A lot of opportunities for this defense to get 3 and outs, sacks, interceptions on Bryce Young here. And that's exactly what you need and want from a defense. This team cannot score. So when you think of a low scoring offense here that can barely move the ball down the field, that's what you want to see when you think of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going against this division rival here. The Atlanta Falcons at the Jets, who currently give up the 2nd most amount of points to opposing defenses. Whether it's Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle, that's exactly what you want to see. You saw the Miami Dolphins and how they performed this past week against the New York Jets, and score over 19 fantasy points, if I'm not mistaken, for the Miami Dolphins. And I think the Atlanta Falcons, the exact same thing. AJ Terrell against Garrett Wilson. It's going to be a tough matchup. That defense is with Calais Campbell still can get it going there on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. So the Atlanta Falcons, and then the Miami Dolphins versus the Washington Commanders. One of the most sacked quarterbacks currently in the NFL is Sam Howell, and still is Sam Howell. One of the worst offensive line in the NFL is the Washington Commanders, and that is exactly what you want to see here. Kind of, once again, mimicking what we saw against Dolphins and the Jets game. You see that against Dolphins and Washington. Now the difference is Washington can score, but I'm still believing in the sacks, the takeaways, the turnovers, the pick sixes, whatever the case may be, whatever that looks like, that is what I'm willing to do. So Bucks at the Panthers, Falcons at the Jets, and then Dolphins at the Washington Commanders. Those are my top 3 defensive streamers going into week 13 of the fantasy football season. Hopefully that is helpful, guys. Hopefully you stay to the end of the video. Hey, if you are here, that means you are grinding out, trying to get into that fantasy playoffs. Good luck going into week 13, and as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.